marketing teams under pressure to launch campaigns faster? A new marketing era is emerging with generative AI to create personalized campaigns at lightning-fast speed. Introducing generative AI for marketing, powered by Google BigQuery, GrowthLoop, and Typeface, enabling marketers to create hyper-personalized cross-channel marketing campaigns, launch products in hours instead of weeks, and measure results instantly. Meet Rowan at Cecily Juices. He's targeting customers likely to buy their new apple juice flavor on the West Coast. Rowan starts with a universe of Cecily customers. The data resides in Salesforce, but he uses GrowthLoop's easy button solution to ingest that data into Google BigQuery. Then, Google BigQuery machine learning generates predictive scores for key outcomes like the propensity to buy the new apple juice product. Connected to Google BigQuery, GrowthLoop uses Google's GenAI large language model, specifically Palm 2, to find customers in California, Washington, and Oregon who have spent over $100. All of the data resides in Google BigQuery. He describes the ideal audience and watches as GrowthLoop Marv produces the customer list magically. The audience list is used to reach Cecily Juice's target audience for this product launch campaign. Next, he develops on-brand copy and creative that appeals to the audience profile using Typeface's integrated GenAI platform. Typeface makes this a snap, crafting copy, creatives, and Google Ads personalized to Cecily's brand voice and target audience segments. Rowan provides ad copy guidance and campaign goals. Typeface automatically generates several personalized ads aligned to his BigQuery customer audience data. He previews a few Typeface-generated options and selects the perfect ad. Rowan also wants to create a Google display ad showcasing the new product as part of his campaign. Typeface produces a brand-personalized image and copy all at once for his marketing channels. Rowan must generate more assets for all his social media channels. With Typeface, generating personalized social ads that connect with your audience in just seconds is easy. Typeface provides a suite of self-serve templates for any content tailored to each audience and campaign objective. From your hero assets to SEO-optimized blog posts, localized web pages, and much more. Now Rowan sets up a customer journey using GrowthLoop Maestro, orchestrating the audience across channels. He creates personalized content for each audience and channel at scale in minutes with Typeface. After a short time, he can measure the results and performance on any key metric like engagement, revenue, or order quantity. Segment audiences and orchestrate marketing journeys with GrowthLoop. Create personalized content at scale with Typeface. Optimize campaigns using your brand's data stored in Google BigQuery. Transform your marketing with generative AI.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for making it to this early morning session to join us to discuss generative AI for marketing. We are super excited here at Google Cloud. Actually, this week, we are announcing the Data and AI Cloud for Marketing. My name is Yasmine Ahmed. I lead product activation for data and analytics at Google Cloud, and I am super thrilled to be joined with an esteemed panel here with me today, marketing experts in their own right, so that we can delve into the topic of generative AI in marketing. So at Google Cloud, we see Gen AI in marketing actually changing the game for marketeers. There's been a ton of data analysis in marketing forever. In fact, I would argue marketing is one of those functions that has had the most data, customer 360 data across channels. Yet, even though data scientists and analysts have worked on that customer 360 data and worked to get to personalization and that one-to-one, at many times that last hurdle of actually communicating out to customers across channels becomes super complex. Because a customer is not just a single point channel, it's a multi-channel journey, which you'll hear about today. And also, creating customized and personalized content across all of those channels has been near impossible to date. But I am super thrilled with the work we have been doing with our partner ecosystem to launch the Data and AI Cloud for Marketing. The Data and AI Cloud for Marketing is a carefully curated set of partnerships with data ecosystem providers, with CDP players, with solution providers that bring marketing teams the best in marketing in a Gen AI world. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our panel. So maybe actually we'll kick off with just everybody giving your name, your title, and where you're coming from. Oh, you've done it. Perfect. We spoke about, in one of our briefings earlier, we spoke about this idea that actually marketing has become super complex. There's so many different channels. Everybody wants to do personalization. But how do we deal with all of this complexity? Because now we're talking about billions of interactions potentially with many customers. How do we manage that complexity? So maybe, Chris, I'll come to you first because you're actually an ex-Googler. So you worked at Google and dealt with some of the marketing complexity here, and from there you spawned your own startup. Do you want to talk about how you think about complexity?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I think about it is actually, it's funny, every time I talk to my wife about what I do in marketing technology, I say essentially to get into marketing technology, all you have to do is memorize 100 acronyms, and then you can be let into the club. You got to know DSP, DMP, SSP, and then we allow you in. But underlying that is a few simple principles. Right now, there's a few trends I'm seeing that actually simplify things. Number one is the death of the cookie stack. So a lot of marketing technology investment over the last 15 years has been put into website tracking, when your users are anonymous, then trying to personalize your website, and then trying to retarget those folks through display ads. But that entire world is going away, and it's happening urgently. Cookies are going away in 2024. So what marketers are starting to realize is they actually need to understand their customer. They need to build out a customer profile. But the question is, where are they going to do that? They can't do it in an all-in-one marketing platform where they don't own the data. Instead, what they're starting to look to is, how do I actually build out a unified data layer for marketing in Google BigQuery in the data cloud? And once that happens, they're starting to think about this concept of composable marketing technology, which you might have heard about, where essentially they say, once I have this unified data layer, I want to bring the business applications to do segmentation, to do journey building, to do predictive analytics, and then to do measurement, all to that unified data layer. And then finally, what accelerates all this is a third trend, which is why we're all here this week, which is generative AI. Just accelerates this trend. If you're going to be able to leverage generative AI in your marketing, the place to do it from is that unified data layer. So as the cookie stack, as I call it, not chocolate chip cookies, but the other cookie stack that we all know about, goes away, folks are going to urgently invest in this known customer platform from the unified data layer, and we're already starting to see that with innovative companies already starting to trend in that direction. And I think Google Cloud is very well positioned to take advantage of that moment.
That's great, Chris. And we are seeing increasingly, actually, customers building those customer data platforms, see customer 360s on the data and AI cloud. And as you mentioned, building on top of that applications, because the last thing you need is another data silo, right? And so, Brian, I'd love to come to you because Red Sox, you're doing a lot more outbound now with fan experiences for you guys. How do you see the complexity increasing?
Yeah, so I think as Chris had mentioned a moment ago, we're all not too far removed from, having data was basically kind of in the purview of, DBAs and, SQL jockeys, who kind of could pull our data together. And we kind of all evolved a little bit, increasing our knowledge with data analytics groups and reporting capabilities and things. But to me, this is the next obvious logical evolution, if you will. The ability to be able to kind of democratize the data, the ability to be able to, allow all groups, to have exposure and visibility visibility into being able to kind of create what ifs, you know? So it's not solely in the purview of any one kind of area per se. You know, you're still gonna have your expertise in certain domains, but like I view kind of just the way I think of like, you know, just generative AI anyways, if I'm writing, I think of it as like a writing companion. I think in the marketing space, it'll become the marketing companion, you know, and being able to kind of, you know, improve both the quality of our campaigns, the personalization of our campaigns, you know, and being able to do it in such a fashion that, you know, other groups can kind of get visibility into it without having the, you know, the depth of knowledge and expertise that oftentimes is required.
Great. And Rahul, I'll come to you with a similar question. You know, Tripadvisor, I know I have many holidays I want to go on, so there's just so many combinations actually for matching consumers with trips and various different ways that you can do that matching. How do you see that show up in the marketing landscape?
Yeah, and I think the way I think about this is, we start talking about the complexity in the marketing world and personalization. Again, I've been in the field for so long that, and we all know that personalization is not a new concept, right? Yet we have not cracked the nut on personalization. Targeting and personalization, I mean, I've been talking about it for the last 10, 15 years. But I think underneath that, if I just really click down, why is it so complex? Why has it been hard to make progress on personalization? I think there's three factors for that. Number one, I think about is the data and tech complexity, the number of vendors. I mean, Chris was alluding, the acronyms have expanded, exploded, right? If you are a marketing organization today, you have to deal with these hundreds of different vendors, partners, ecosystem to deal with. So I think there's something to be said about simplifying it, making it easier for marketers, analysts, data scientists, whoever is working with that data and tech, to make it so easy that they can construct these experiences and match it with the user expectations. So there's complexity. Number one is about data and tech stack being very hard to manage right now. Number two is, especially, I look at this in the world of marketing, the desire and the speed of campaign production and what the marketers want to do is not necessarily matched by the creative teams. Oftentimes I've heard there's marketers are bottlenecked by the speed of creative production. And this has been, again, I've been at different companies in the past, and even today I see that as a big problem, right? Where if once you have the right audience, right data, you need to have a right message, a creative, an image, and everything to go along with that at the speed, at the scale that you want to deploy these audiences against, right? So that's number two in terms of complexity and challenge is the creative velocity. And lastly, I would say I've seen where there's a great marketing strategy. Marketing organizations, channel leaders have fantastic strategy, but that's hard to match in terms of execution strategy, right? How do you think about that cross-journey, cross-channel strategy to execute on all the things you want? Has not been that easy. So when you think about all these, like these three challenges, you kind of juxtapose that with what generative AI can do, I'm super excited. Because I think at least for number one and number two, generative AI can help in a very material way.
Awesome. And certainly from customers I speak to, that challenge you speak about, MarTech stacks just being so complex, we're adding tools to it. Feels like every day, every year, those marketing landscapes just grow even smaller and smaller and smaller. You need a magnifying glass to see all of these different players. So certainly it's become very technology heavy, very technology centric, very complex. But ultimately, it's the marketeer who has the knowledge and the domain and expertise of what campaigns they want to run and execute. So, Chris, I'm interested from your perspective. You started GrowthLoop because you wanted to put that power in the hands of a marketeer instead of having these complex tech stacks that have to be run by IT. Can you talk a little bit about the need that you saw, the challenge you saw, and why you started GrowthLoop?
Yeah, absolutely. So the major issue is I think marketing technology gets in the way today of what marketers actually want to do. Fundamentally, you just want to speak to your customers. You just have a lot of customers to speak to. And so we put in 30 layers of technology to help you do that. And when I go back about a dozen years, I worked in marketing at Google, as you mentioned, and I worked essentially to send email campaigns. And what I realized, I was a young whippersnapper. You know, I had my Noogler hat on. I don't know if you've ever seen those with the spinny things on top on social media. But I was very excited. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? My job was to raise 365-day revenue. That was my KPI. And I said, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to come in and I'm going to run 100 experiments. We have over 100,000 customers. I'm going to split them into 20 segments, and I'm going to run 5 experiments per segment in a customer journey, and I'm going to hit my goal. And you know, it was the folks were sitting at the desk, and they're like, "Well, this kid hasn't met marketing technology before." and so I started on my first campaign. I had to go to the data analytics team and say, "Hey, I really love to target this one audience. How do we go about doing that?" They're like, "Well, I'm going to write some SQL. I'm going to stitch together data. I'll see you in about 2 weeks. Your audience is going to be too small. You're going to ask me to go back to the drawing board, and we'll do that over and over again until we get it right. Then I'm going to give you a CSV. You're going to load it into the email tool. You're going to go to your brand agency. They're going to write a brief. They're going to create HTML. You're going to load that into the tool." And what I realized was, oh, I think I'm a project manager. I'm actually not. I don't know how to do marketing here. And so I could get one campaign out the door, but I couldn't get, there was no chance of getting 100. So the reason we started GrowthLoop was to fundamentally solve that problem. I wanted the technology to fall away. I wanted a marketer like myself to be able to use a self-service UI to create those 20 segments. That shouldn't be that hard. It should be a few clicks of the button on top of BigQuery to create those audience segments. If I want to generate a journey across the marketing channels I already do, that should be easy too. I should be able to create a journey across Braze, across Salesforce Marketing Cloud, across my push notification and Google Ads, very easily in a visual interface. And then finally, my favorite step of the whole process was I would run these campaigns, right? And then I would go beg for analytics resources to say, can you just tell me what happened? Like, I know there was opens and clicks, but can we just see what happened to revenue? I would love to see what happened to revenue. And they're like, well, you know, we can start a JIRA ticket, you know, and we'll see if we can get to that experiment. And so what we wanted to do with GrowthLoop was just automate that process. If you're going to scale the amount of experiments you run, you also want to be able to measure them automatically on revenue in BigQuery. And so if you solve each of those steps, what you're effectively doing is saying that young kid coming into your organization can actually run 100 experiments. Now, the next issue, though, is exactly what you touched on, Rahul, is once you're creating 100 experiments, what's the issue? A lot of our customers will start to scale the amount of experiments they can run, and then they say, but my creative team can only do 3 HTML emails, so what are we going to do? And that's why it was almost like a romantic comedy when I met Vishal for the first time. You know, we were running in the rain, and I was like, I didn't know I was always looking for Typeface, but I've now found you. You know, everybody's sitting there with their hundreds of segments, and they couldn't create the creative, and that's why we're so excited about the partnership, because it brings it home.
And I'd love to actually come to you, Vishal, because you've similarly, recently now, with GenAI, seen a similar challenge in the marketing landscape that you're going after to reduce, again, complexity. Can you talk about how marketing GenAI came about for Typeface?
No, thank you. Yeah, so I think Chris did a very good job of covering the surface here. So I think if we look at it, right, so if we just look at how data has evolved, we've talked a lot about data, and there has been a lot of investments in data, disparate data stacks have come together. There's a lot more you can do with data. But then ultimately, to Chris's point, if you can't create the creative, what good is that to me from a marketing perspective? And I think we must have talked to like 100+ CMOs over the last few months, and we saw a few trends clearly emerge, right? One was, hey, how do you actually create content today? And we realized there is 2 ways people do that, and sometimes there is 15, but I'll just summarize in 2 different buckets. So one is what we started calling the brand loop. So the idea there is, I'm a CMO, I have a budget, I hire an agency, I create pixel perfect on-brand content, and it's the massive amount of content I create. That's the content that goes on all my premier destinations. But then, on the other end of the spectrum, all these channels are evolving so fast, topics are changing by the hour, they're not changing by the week, so I don't have those 6 weeks anymore. So, and then what do? Marketers tend to kind of do a different loop, which is kind of what we call the velocity loop. So sometimes wherever you're allowed to, you'll go quickly to Canva to cook up an image, or go to some stock photography to do a quick photograph and find that and use it. You will write the copy yourself. But the challenge of that is, of course, it is speed and it is very fast. It's not on brand. And these 2 loops today in most organizations don't talk to each other. So there's no way for this velocity loop, is what we call it, to kind of get inspired by the brand loop. And why hasn't it happened so far? So we believe there was a foundational technology piece that was really missing to create content at scale. And that's kind of what generative AI does. Now, generative AI still has a lot of things to be done, and we'll talk more about that. But at a high level, for the very first time, now you are able to create content. So if you can build a unified content hub, just like we did with data, in an organization where you learn from your branded content, use it to create velocity content fast, I think that's kind of where the holy grail is. Then you can massively unlock data, you can run experiments at scale, and you can kind of do constant evolution of data. It's not like every 2 weeks I go to an agency and get new content in, right? None of those things go away. Agencies are very much needed. The velocity loop is very much needed. But how do you bring all of these together to kind of create branded content at scale? I think that's going to be the foundational transformation here.
Wonderful. So, Brian, coming to you, because I know for you it's been at Red Sox, it's been an imperative to actually get your marketers the tools in their hands so that they can help that fan experience, deliver the best-in-class experience. How have you found that experience? I know you're a user also of GrowthLoop.
Yeah, so we've been using GrowthLoop now for about 3.5 years, very successfully. They've helped us kind of orchestrate our initial kind of cloud enterprise environment, so get that 360-degree view of the customer, the fan, kind of in our world. But we have kind of a complex world too. We have a very integrated and critical relationship with Major League Baseball, for how we do a lot of our campaigns. We also have a very sophisticated Salesforce environment. And so for us, trying to find solutions that could solve both problems was really kind of high on our list. And as we think about how we do outbound sales campaigns and how do we kind of reach the right targeted audiences, whether it's with digital products or digital services, or in the form of kind of working with the sales teams and things like that, it obviously kind of started with getting our arms around our environment, our data, our tools and things. But we've kind of taken it, I think, to the natural level of where that can go. Like we've kind of not so much reached a problem wall, so to speak, but I don't think it's if you look forward, you can certainly see that there's so much opportunity, so much more personalization, moving beyond personas, the ability to be able to create, as you alluded to with Typeface, more on-brand content, more on-brand sort of campaigns and things like that in order to sort of be able to kind of keep up with the volume of demands across multiple different audiences, sectors, and things like that. So we're super excited, and the group of folks for us have really been kind of the impetus to kind of help solve these problems for us. So we're excited that they partnered with best-in-class companies like Google, obviously, and Typeface and others, to kind of deliver the products that we continue to make us successful. So we think AI is a very natural extension for us, and we're super excited about what that means.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'd love to touch again back on what Vishal was talking about with the generative AI content. There's just the ability to scale in a way that's not possible before. So Rahul, maybe coming to you, because I know with Tripadvisor, again, there's lots of potential wonderful imagery that can be used to sell those trips to those exotic locations. How do you see Gen AI playing a role with content creation and marketing?
It's massive. I mean, before just gonna get into some of these details, I'll share how the scale of data and the scale of complexity at Tripadvisor. So Tripadvisor, we have 400 million plus monthly active users across all the regions, all the countries in the world, billion plus reviews in total, million plus reviews getting created every month, and then 10 million plus businesses. And when you think about that scale, that many users, it's a multi-sided marketplace where everybody who's interested in travel is coming to Tripadvisor. So the challenge for us is, how do you think about understanding the intent of the person who's visiting, whether it's a traveler, is a partner, is a hotel chain, is a travel company, whoever is visiting, understanding that intent and matching that intent with the right message to drive personalization. And this is where I know what I was alluding earlier, that those challenges become quite magnified at that scale. And in these areas where I feel Gen AI has been and can play a massive role for us, right? When you try to understand the audience context and having the segmentation, the audiences, creating audiences at scale is where we're starting to think about how to do that with AI, right? A lot more using that technology to create these audiences at scale. They are updated, I wouldn't say not real time yet, but on a daily basis, right? And then matching that audiences with the right type of content so that we can push this personalization at scale and then apply testing and A/B testing and experimentation and measurement framework on top of that. So I think in these, like the chain that I mentioned, certainly the audience creation with the creative creation and doing that at scale and measurement is where we're applying generative AI right now.
Amazing. One of those 400 million active users is definitely me as I look to my next vacation.
I just wanted to add, Rahul, to what you said. One of the most important pieces in connection points is what you talked about with the velocity loop and then the content loop. If you can do the audiences to the creative. So one of the things we've been working heavily on in this partnership is what we're calling persona prompts. And the idea is if you go into Bard today and you say, hey, I want you to write me a churn win-back email, you're going to get a generic answer back. It's going to be pretty good, but it's not going to be to your business, right? And so one of the most effective things about the product partnership that we've launched here together is to say, if you're achieving velocity in terms of your segmentation, that should actually create a very rich prompt for your generative AI LLM in Typeface to generate the creative personalized to that audience, right? So you can provide a full rich profile from the locations people are in, what are they buying, what do they prefer in terms of channels when they're in, provide that as a part of the audience as a prompt to the LLM. I think that's really where generative AI is gonna go, is richer prompts.
That's awesome. I know the other day when we debated about, does Gen AI content really cut it? Does it look realistic enough? Will consumers respond to it? Brian, you'd made a comment of, we don't need the content to win an Emmy. Can you talk about how you see, is the content good enough from Gen AI for your marketing campaigns?
Well, I think that comment, I'm sure there's some marketing folks now going like, hey, we want to win it. But I think just being realistic, there's so many different flavors of campaigns that we want to put out. And I think, we want to make them more personalized. We want to maybe make sure, like everyone, that we're kind of hitting our target audience appropriately type of thing. And the reality is that I think the more important thing is something you said, which is you want it on brand. Like, I think the key thing is being on brand. We have different levels of campaigns where some are going to be more sophisticated and whatnot than others, but they should all resonate relative to like our kind of brand promise, if you will. And so to me, I think that's kind of really kind of the holy grail of getting that part right. And I think, generative AI, I think, I think it's sort of a, if it's crawl, walk, run, I'd like to think we're maybe in jog, a little bit, but it's, I think part of the thing is it's an accelerant. Like is what I'm looking at. It's not like a finished product for me today, but it's an accelerant, and it gives people sort of the ability to kind of get them closer to the promise, if you will. I think ultimately the end objective is to reduce cycle time, whichever form that takes. And to me, this is another way of getting there. And as I said before, kind of doing it in kind of a democratized fashion where, at the end of the day, your key people are going to be the ones making some of the final decisions. But I just feel like we're evolving to the point where, we can do much, much more, let different groups, create their own hypothesis about audiences that are closest to it. Let them, run these kind of almost kind of in-house sort of equivalent of campaigns, as opposed to having to necessarily make that sort of, I think the whole challenge we all deal with is the whole funnel. And how do we kind of create no blockage in this whole pipeline? And I think generative AI, I think will go a long ways towards freeing up a lot of that.
Mm. And we saw actually in the keynote yesterday with Thomas, there was a demo that showed that kind of branding, like how do you bring a certain kind of tone to the images? It could be a brand tone, a brand voice, a brand message to the generative AI content. And I know at Typeface, that's actually something that Typeface is really focused on. It's not just going to be Gen AI creating stock images, it's going to be Gen AI creating images that are crossed with your brand voice, your brand image. Vishal, can you talk a little bit about why that was so important?
Yeah, I think going back to what Brian was saying just a minute ago, right? So if you look at this, you can do a lot of different kind of content today. And actually, I'll tell you a little funny story. We started Typeface right before any of this ChatGPT revolution happened. And it wasn't even clear if we are going to be able to generate good quality images. This is really, really no real foundational model existed in imaging. And just in the last 9 months, we have come such a long way that we are now producing really good images. I'll encourage you to come to our stall here and just check it out. These are some really fabulous images. So this quality is a very moving target right now. What is very, very important is how do we represent your brand's products? I would say there are like 4 kinds of personalization we need to do. One is around your products. Second is around your voice and style. The third is around your audiences and how do we create audience. And the fourth is around your channels. So all of that, because a brand might be a singular brand, but I don't talk the same way I talk on my website, the way I talk on Twitter or Instagram or Google ads. They're all different brand voices. There's not just single brand voice. So just being able to really quickly capture that with a few simple questions, forms, and then being able to apply at scale is kind of a problem. If we solve and we solve well, that is where the massive unlock is. So.
One point I would add, I mean, when we talk about content, we talk about images, but we, at least so far, haven't talked enough about the text part of it, right? And if you think about an ad copy, the text becomes such an important aspect of it, right? Whether it be if you're looking at email and there's like how you think about the subject headline, how you think about the summary snippets that go at different parts of that image, or even just the core snippets of content, textual content that you can use in different marketing. So one of the ways we are trying to leverage Gen AI is taking these snippets of textual summaries and using that in different marketing aspects, different personalization. When we launch our trip planning app with Gen AI, we're taking all these summaries and including them in the recommendation that comes out of our version of trip planning. So I would highly encourage all of you to think about, like, when you think of Gen AI applications in marketing, image absolutely is one. Obviously, audience segmentation is another one. But just think about even the textual part of it. If you have content already available in terms of your unstructured data and text, using that in summarized fashion could give you a lot of big ROI.
And I think I'm going to build on that a little bit. So one of the things, once again, we talk to marketers and they tell us, hey, I don't have a problem of content. I mean, I'm just going to regret saying that. But I actually have a problem of scaling my content. So you usually have something. You have a web page, you might have a video, you might have a creative brief, you might have something. So now how do you take it and from a YouTube video, how do you create an announcement email? How do you create a blog? How do you create a newsletter? So this personalization to 10 different channels from a single asset, that's where generative AI can really help. So we have a template in Typeface. You just give a YouTube link, tell us what you want to rewrite into, which voice you want to use, and we will just do that for you, right? So just this part of it. And then on top of that, every single channel has multiple audiences. Now this becomes a 10x to 100x problem very, very fast. And that's really, to Rahul's point, one area where, excuse me, where generative AI is definitely kind of clicking the mark right now and is already there. Like, so you should try it.
I love that we moved into this space of actually, how do you orchestrate this content now across so many different channels? Because it's one thing building one piece of content, but as we think about these channels, Vishal, as you're mentioning, each channel actually needs a different format. If you're putting an Instagram post out there versus you're sending somebody an email campaign versus you have an SEO search, those are all different formats of content. And actually, Gen AI today can help you generate all of those different varieties of content. It's not just content for different audiences or individuals, it's content by channel, by audience. But that suddenly leads to like, oh my gosh, that's millions of pieces of content now in text form, image form, tweet form, combinations. It's just so much different content now to reach audiences. So you hit this complexity of orchestrating. So I know GrowthLoop has really been focusing on this idea of multi-channel orchestration of journeys. And the partnership here with GrowthLoop and Typeface is about taking now all of this generative AI content and figuring out which channel to put it on. Can you talk a little to that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about a customer journey, today a lot of companies, they already have an existing marketing technology stack. So they may use Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Attentive for push notification. You might use a different tool for SMS. And marketers tend to love those tools because they've cut their teeth on them and they want to use them. And so when you think about a customer journey and orchestrating content as well as the audiences across channels, you need to use that current marketing technology stack. You actually want to bring the capability to the existing stack. You don't want to make everybody go all in on a totally different platform and do an 18-month migration. And so the way we think about it is if you actually can generate the audience segments and create a customer journey that orchestrates across those channels directly from BigQuery, then feed those audiences and the steps of that journey into a powerful creative capability like Typeface. You can generate creative for each step, and then the audience for that step in the journey, as well as the creative, go to the tool you already use. So you don't need to switch. You've just brought the capability of what we're talking about from going one manual customer journey end to end to actually being able to scale it.
Yeah, wonderful. So we've talked about amazing technology in the Gen AI space, but as you said, Vishal, the space is just moving super fast. Things are being developed and innovated every day. And you saw from the demos at the keynote yesterday, you could be playing with this stuff on Google Cloud today and generating images and so on. I'd love to touch on how Brian, Rahul, are you thinking about a decision around building it yourself and going to Google Cloud directly and Vertex AI models versus partnering versus buying solutions? Where do you fall on your marketing teams just even getting started? Because for a lot of people, it's that first step of how do you even get started? So maybe I'll come to yourself, Rahul, first.
Yeah, so the way we are thinking, and I'm thinking about this right now, is if you're thinking of all the generative AI applications, even if as a marketing team or even outside of marketing domain, there's multiple applications of generative AI. The way we have bucketed define our strategy is there are certain applications where we're looking at directly creating for our travelers and our business partners, right? So this is where trip planning, search, some of the big applications we are working ourselves, but also working with, so that's the core part of our strategy. And then there's other applications we're thinking, how can we accelerate what we have been doing already? And this is where we are very much open to working with partners. Right, because this is where I feel like there's companies and partners such as folks here have spent enough time and expertise in building these applications. So with that expertise and deep thinking, we can get a quick acceleration. So I would say we are thinking on both. Like certain areas of generative AI, we are building directly with some of the foundational models and some of the fine-tuning or prompt engineering, and some areas where we are really partnering very closely with Typeface, GrowthLoop. This is where we're thinking about it.
Great. Over to you, Brian.
Yeah, so I guess in some similar ways, I think right now it's too early to kind of pick any one, obviously, solution. So it's an and. MLB is doing some very progressive work with Adobe. What Chris said to us is, what Chris said a moment ago was really important, which is, we're trying to find solutions that kind of extend across all of our different, campaigns and all of our different platforms and things like that. So it'll wind up being a bit of a hybrid in some respects, but I think the key thing we're trying to do is keep the intelligence, centralized, so the decision making can be, housed in one location. We can do a lot of these different sort of what-if analysis. We can democratize these capabilities more broadly, socialize them, across a broader reach for us, and then kind of use the tool that's right, to kind of deliver the audiences, collect the results, make decisions, continue to sort of, rinse and repeat a little bit. So when I think of it, the journey part of it, I think it's going to be, a hybrid of different things for us. I mean, we work very closely with GrowthLoop. We're excited about the Typeface component. We're doing some very sophisticated work on the Salesforce side. We're looking to continue that and then, partner with our friends from MLB on some of the digital platforms. So there's a lot ahead.
I think keeping your options open is a great strategy right now. And at Google Cloud, I mean, for our data and AI cloud, we're very proud of being an open cloud because we know there's the teams that will come and build directly on Google Cloud. They have the skills, they're innovating in the space, and then there's the partner ecosystem is so important to us because I think, Rahul, as you mentioned, there's just so much innovation happening in this space. The likes of GrowthLoop, Typeface, they're working through all of the challenges that come with prompt engineering. How do you apply a large language model effectively? So there's also this vibrant partner ecosystem that is evolving and bringing solutions to market. So I think that multi-pronged approach makes sense, especially where we are right now in the journey. So last question across the panel. So would love to hear your thoughts on what do you think is the next big wave in marketing? We have Gen AI. What do you think that's going to unlock the possibilities? Or maybe it's not Gen AI and it's something else. I'll start with Vishal.
No, that's a great question. I think I would just say a lot of things are going to be very different. Like once you connect, like the data world looks very different than what it looked 10 years ago. And content world is going to look very different very shortly here. So I think the key here is how do you kind of digest all of this and find scenarios that work very well today, but kind of keep an open mind and let it go where it is going and kind of try to see where it goes. But to me, all the ways you do journeys, you do A/B experimentation, all of that is going to dramatically change. Like you would do A/B experimentation because you could only do 2 creatives. So you would put one out there and another one out there and see which one works, and you will scale that one that worked. But now, if you're able to generate this brand content at scale, there is no limit to doing that, right? You can actually have a constantly evolving piece of content. You can see what works, you can understand what works because it's not an opaque object anymore, learn from that, create even better, and try it very quickly. So this world of how you put content out there is going to be a constant loop instead of a A/B testing experiment kind of loop. That's one thing I will leave you with. There's lots of other things and we can talk, but we're going to not have enough time. But that's definitely one thing I feel that will change.
Very interesting. We're moving from A/B testing to alphabet testing. Maybe even the alphabet's not enough. Rahul, over to you.
Yes, I mean, next big wave of innovation. I think it'll be a little bit of a simpler answer to that. I mean, no buzzword answer, but I think this is going to be a wave of automation, right? And that wave of automation powered by LLMs, generative AI technology behind it. Because the way I see this, trends, especially if we look at Gen AI and LLMs, what they can do today is materially different and better than what somebody would have thought, researcher would have thought 6 months, 1 year, 2 years back, right? Obviously, we know the applications of large language models in the areas of marketing we're talking about right now, but even the traditional, or not traditional, like some of the earlier deep learning models, how we look at personalization, recommendation systems, how we look at your modeling in different worlds of AI, all of that is where LLMs are having a huge impact already. So what I see is powered by these LLMs and how they are improving and getting better every single day, that can unlock a lot of automation for every workflow, and that'll be a huge one.
Yeah, I think briefly, I would say the same thing. I think automation's the answer. I think it's also building on a multi-year roadmap and I think it's a lot more experimenting because these things are changing so quickly. It's difficult to sort of define the obvious path forward. So I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on all of us to kind of understand to raise our game a little bit, to kind of become more cognizant of what the options are out there and how they integrate. But I think building that sort of roadmap, that architectural system that kind of ties all this together to create those sophisticated journeys, I think is the holy grail.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times. Gen AI is going to make us raise our game because it creates so much more optionality out there. Chris, finally with you.
Yes, so I think if you fast forward this over the next 3 years, generative AI is going to make the technology fall away. It's going to make the technology disappear for marketers while empowering them. So when somebody walks in and says, I actually want to run 1,000 experiments to hit my KPI, which is 365-day revenue, there's not chuckles in the room. It's actually possible. And it becomes an actual conversation for the marketer to say, I want to target everybody likely to buy jeans in the next 3 weeks. Give me 5 segments. It presents 5 segments back to you, and it gives you a report about them. You say, I want to break those down into 5 subsegments for the top geolocations. Now you have 25 segments. Then you say, I want you to create 2 journey options per segment. Now you have 50 journeys, and I want you to generate the creative for email and push notification for that journey. Then please run the journeys, and then based on the winning journey for each of those 25 subsegments, start to reallocate traffic and actually optimize to my KPI. That's when we know generative AI has lived out its full potential, is you can run those 1,000 experiments and you don't actually have to learn SQL and HTML.
Amazing. I can't wait for that future. Thank you so much, Vishal, Chris, Rahul, Brian, for joining us on this panel, and thank you to the audience for kicking off day 2 here with the next wave of marketing with Gen AI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.